welcome and welcome back to my channel. My name is Aisha. The sun is out and you know we love the sun on this channel because today's video is going to be my July wrap-up. So I'm going to be sharing all of the books that I read in July, but before then let me give you a quick backstory. So you know how in my last video I was telling you how I had a reading slump for all of June and most of July. So my reading in July did not start until the third week, like towards the end of the third week. Anyway, so the first book that I finished in July is Catalogue of a Private Life by Najwa bin Shatwan, translated by Sawad Hussein. So I wrote a longer review for this book. I believe it's a collection of 8 short stories. It's mostly set in Libya, and the central theme is just the corruption and bad governance, as well as the war in Libya and the effects that it has on people. I gave this book 3.75 stars because of the absurdity theme that most of the stories had. So even though they had very clear themes, right? The bad governance, corruption and war, especially the effect of war on people of Libya, but there was a kind of like magical realism, absurdity kind of thing to them that just made the stories a little bit difficult to grasp. It wasn't like sci-fi or alternate universe kind of thing. It was just absurdity. I don't know if this is like a theme. In the titular story, Catalogue of a Private Life, we see a character who is a bodyguard for a general that is planning his next strategy at war after losing all of his previous strategies. Like, it did not give him any tangible results, meaning he did not win the war, and he has lost a lot of people. So it's men that are fighting for him. He has lost a lot of people. So we just follow the bodyguard kind of introspecting on the validity of the war, and maybe he should just kill the general and just be over with it. There's just a lot of introspection going on. Another thing that I really like about this collection is how well Najwa bin Shatwan infuses the average Islamic things into the stories. So there was this in the titular story, this same Catalogue of a Private Life, this bodyguard would always tell the general whenever he sneezed, he would always tell him Yarhamukallah, and the general would never respond back. Like, me as a Muslim reading that particular chapter, it kind of made sense to me because there's a tradition in Islam, it's an hadith, was reported by Abu Hurairah. So when a Muslim sneezes and another Muslim is within the vicinity, you're supposed to bless the person. The person that sneezes would say Alhamdulillah, and the person beside them would say Yarhamukallah, and the person that sneezes would say Balakum. It's basically just like oh, may God bless you. Essentially, there's this tradition, whenever we sneeze as Muslims, and that was reflected in the story. There was also another story, which is my favorite story in this collection when I think back, and the title of that story is Return Ticket. So in Return Ticket, we follow a grandmother, she's dead, telling our grandson the story of their village and how laws governing the village kind of is different from other places. And we also see like the ill treatment of like women, how women face policing in societies generally. So in one society, the grandmother is being told to cover herself up, like wear the hijab. In another society, she's being told to remove the hijab to be able to access that society. So it's basically just examining a lot of different things together in a very absurd way. That's the only way I can describe this collection. It's quite absurd. So I know for a fact that it's not everybody that will enjoy this collection. Like, if you don't enjoy absurdity or slight magical realism, I don't think you will like this collection. So I gave it 3.5 stars because of how the absurdity kind of messed with my head at some point. The next book I completed is The Wash Day Diaries by Jamila Rawza and Robin Smith. This is a graphic novel. It just follows 4 Black women, their best friends. The center of the story is their relationship with their hair. So the story starts off with one of the characters washing her hair after getting back from work, but at the same time we see them being Black women in the society. So there was a scene where one of the characters was catcalled, and when she did not respond, people catcalling her kind of just used the B word. Yeah, I think they used the B word. There was one other character that was dealing with like depression and that depression manifested in how she was taking care of her hair, or lack thereof. She wasn't taking care of her hair, amongst other things. There was a character with square, and it's just her reconciling with her grandmother that, you know, hurt her because she came out as square. There was another character that was battling with a stalker, so there was this ex-boyfriend that would not let her go. It's just them being friends, their relationship with her hair, how their general life affects their relationship with their hair. I really liked this collection because it was very light-hearted, even though it examined all this, like, you know, every topics. The colors were vibrant, the drawings brilliant, the ladies, like the characters, the way that they were drawn was brilliant. I wanted to jump into the book and meet them, so I gave this book 4.5 stars. It made me happy. I wish that the author further examined the character that had depression. I can't remember her name now, but I wish she went into her own character like a little bit more, or kind of give her like some sort of happy ending when it comes to her depression. The next book I read is A Funny Kind of Paradise by Joe Owens. This was an unexpected favorite. I didn't expect to like this book, but this book is essentially following a woman in her 60s. She's called Francesca, and Francesca has had a stroke. The stroke has made her non-verbal, and she's in a care home. So this book just follows her narrating the goings on in the care home, and also giving us a backflash into our own personal life. So how she raised her children, and a relationship with her job, a relationship with herself, a relationship with her friends, a relationship with our own parents as well. Even though she's narrating the story to us, she's essentially narrating it to a dead best friend in her head, while also showing us the dedication that the workers at the care home have towards their patients. So yeah, I think it's a really nice book. I really enjoyed it. It was an unexpected favorite. I gave it 5 stars. Like, the next book that I finished is The Middle Daughter by Chika Onigwe. This is the July pick for the Indulgent Bibliophile Book Club, and I read this book while listening to the audiobook. This one is very controversial. I knew the story was going to be very sad because it follows the experience of a young girl called Nani, who is only 17. She's going through grief, and through a series of very naive and maybe irresponsible decisions, she falls into the arms of a greedy, problematic, self-proclaimed man of God called Ephraim, who turns out to be an oppressive husband. And then she loses contact with her family, the remaining members of her family, and she just goes through terrible oppression living with this man, this Ephraim. So yeah, this is basically like the backstory, and is written in the blog, right? So I kind of knew where the story was going, and I braced myself for the anger that I would feel. Nani is a very naive character. She's a typical one gets inside because she doesn't know anything. Or, well, not to say that she doesn't know anything. Her reality is different from the reality she ended up being trusting to. Even though, like, you know, you can blame her, like, ah, babe, you're making the wrong decision. Like, you kept making the wrong decision. I just feel like because she was sheltered, and because this guy, this Ephraim, just saw that, she was a very easy target. But yeah, if you're looking for something very fast-paced, this book is relatively fast-paced, and you want to experience characters making terrible decisions, this is the book you go for. Definitely go for this book. I gave this book 3.75 stars, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I gave it 3.75 stars. I wanted to give it 4 stars, but I didn't like the ending. I wanted more gratification from the ending, and it didn't give me that, so I just gave it 3.75 stars. It's not a bad book though. The next book that I read is Climate Change is Racist, Race, Privilege, and the Struggle for Climate Justice by Jeremy Williams. Now, this is a non-fiction, right? And the main theme of the book is climate change and climate injustice. I really like this book because from the onset, the author was very open about his privilege and was open about his own mindset going into writing this book, thinking, oh, you know, I'm a white person, should I be writing this book, or should I leave it up to, you know, people from minority backgrounds to write this book because it is their reality, right? And then you can clearly see him coming to the realization that no, I should be the one writing this book. I should be the one using my privilege to write this book and point out the obvious problem. And I feel like because he knows that he's a white man and people readily listen to white men, he actively uses that privilege to examine issues and talk about the intersection of racism and climate change, and how climate change is inadvertently affecting people who contribute the littlest to our carbon footprint. I also love all of his references in this book. You can clearly tell that he has read a lot, he has consumed a lot of different books by different authors from different backgrounds on climate change, for him to arrive at this conclusion. I was very happy, especially that he referenced Nakate's book. I've forgotten this girl's full name. What was the title of this book? I read it last year, but I'll put a cover on the screen. But yeah, I was very excited that he referenced that book, because that book is one of the few books that are coming out of Africa in terms of climate change. It was just balanced in the way that he passed across his points. It was very balanced. He recognized the fact that, we can't keep blaming white people for the sins of the past, right? But white people can actively, utilize their privilege to rectify, or at the very least reduce some of the effects that those sins of the past are manifesting today in terms of climate change particularly. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book. It was a very, very short book, passed across this point very, very succinctly. I gave it 4.5 stars. The next book that I read is Shy by Max Potter. This was a disappointment actually. So earlier this year I read Max Potter's book Grief is a Thing with Feathers, I think is that the name of the book. I read that book earlier this year and I really enjoyed it. Surprisingly, I was very surprised by how much I enjoyed that book. So when Chai came out, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna read this book. I find that I enjoy Max Potter's books when I listen to them rather than just reading them. So it took me like 4 or 5 tries to get into this audiobook. And this book basically just follows the story of a troubled teenage boy called Shai. Shai's head is a terrible place to be in. Like, I cannot imagine living in his head. His head is just, there's just so much going on in his head. It comes off as a difficult child, but he's really just troubled. At the end of the day, he gets put into this home for very troubled young men. And I feel like along the way I could pick up things of Max Potter trying to talk about, how the society abandons boys that they consider troubled, that are up to no good, that are just going to end up being criminals. But at the end of the day, I didn't really enjoy this book. Like, it was just like, okay, like, can we be over and done with? I gave it 2.5 stars because it wasn't like I hated it, but I didn't like it. I was just in the middle. I was just like, okay, no problem. Like, I'm sorry for Shy, but the next book that I read is Read to Alone, Short Stories by Jack Wang. This was an unexpected favorite as well. I actually really enjoyed this book. Like, I was quite surprised by how much I enjoyed this book. So this is a collection of 7 short stories that follows different Chinese characters in diaspora. So the first story, called the Enquiries, follows a Chinese orphan in British Columbia and Canada who cross-dresses. He dresses as a girl to get onto a hockey team so that he can play hockey, because he couldn't get onto the boys team because of racism, right? So I thought this was an interesting story, and it has a melancholic feel to it because, yeah, it didn't end well, like as you expect, right? It did not end well because the book was set in like 1920s, so you can imagine like the racism that Chinese East Asians were facing at the time, right, in Canada, and especially for a boy that is an orphan who is being exploited as well. So I really enjoyed that story, surprisingly, and it kind of set the pace for my getting into the other stories. The next story is called The Nature of Things. It follows this Chinese couple that moved to Shanghai from, I think, North America, somewhere in North America, because racism was like disturbing them. The husband could not get a job as a medical doctor because he was Chinese, so they moved to Shanghai, and the World War II breaks out, and then the Japanese invade China. Because of that, the husband, because he's a doctor, he had to go help in the front lines, and they just it was just kind of like a tragic separation. Also a melancholic feel. I feel like Jack Wang has a nice way of writing. I don't know, I just really enjoyed it. There's also another story of a Chinese family trying to buy a house in South Africa, in apartheid South Africa, and the mother, the wife of this family, was deluded into thinking that, because she was not black exactly, she was going to be able to get access to the privilege that white people had in South Africa. And my least favorite story in this collection is the titular story, which is Read to Alone. I didn't really enjoy the story. It was too long. I felt like the story was too long. Like, it was absolutely not necessary for it to be that long, and I wasn't super invested in them. But in general, this book is a brilliant short story collection. I give this book 4 stars. The last book that I read is Monday Is Not Coming by Tiffany D. Jackson. This was also an unexpected favorite. I gave the book 5 stars, and I stayed up till like 2 a.m. to finish this book. Like, I was crying, I was bawling my eyes out. I did not expect this book to shake me the way it shook me. But basically, this book follows a character called Claudia. Our friend Monday Charles is missing, and she seems to be the only one that is noticing that Monday is missing. And we just follow her trying to get everybody, all the adults in her life, interested in finding out where Monday is. Needless to say, people didn't take her seriously, and it ended tragically, like you would expect. But I feel like even though I knew where the story was going to, nothing prepared me for how tragic the story ended. Like, nothing prepared me for it. Through Claudia trying to find out what happened to Monday, we see how authorities and just people generally don't take missing black girls. They don't take the situation very seriously. Like, even authorities, even the police, they don't take it seriously when black girls go missing. When people go missing generally, but especially when black girls go missing, it just sounds to see how unseriously that these people take it. We also see the effect of gentrification on just the lives of black people in America generally. There's also a heavy emphasis on child neglect, because you have like 2 different characters in this book. One that is not present, which is Monday, and Claudia, who is present, and seeing this stark difference in their experiences, even though they are both black girls, it's just sad. It's just really sad. Then there's also an important thing that is examined in this book, which is dyslexia, just having learning disabilities, and that is examined through Claudia. I really enjoyed how this was examined, especially the way that Claudia saw her learning disabilities. You can see how hard it was for her to come to terms with the fact that she had a learning disability, and she kept using the phrase, "I'm not one of the stupid people, I'm not one of the stupid people." And I think that reflects how young people see learning disabilities and how that stops them from seeking help on time. But yeah, this was a very good book. I gave it 5 stars, and I really enjoyed it. I added everything Tiffany Jackson has written. I added it to my TBR like immediately. But yeah, those are all of the books that I finished in July. For somebody that started reading towards the end of the month, I did very well. Like, I'm actually really glad. If you've watched this video up until this point, let me know how many books you read in July. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.